at CRE 2024 in Milton Keynes. I'm Chris from Monkey Nut, and I'm delighted to be joined by Jeremy Bell from JBKS, an architecture company. Hi, Jeremy. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks, Chris. And you?
I'm really well. Thank you for asking. Now, tell me a little bit about what it is you do.
Well, we're a firm of architects, and we work specifically and 100% on churches. Well, almost 100%, but we work on churches, and that's where our passion and our drive and our experience is.
Nice.
Christian churches.
Christian churches. Do you go beyond the Christian churches sometimes?
We don't. We
No?
don't. We're just serving the living God, the Christian churches.
Now, we were talking prior to this interview about some of the amazing things that you want to bring out of churches.
Yeah.
So tell me about the joy that this brings you in the company and obviously the churches as well, the work that you're doing.
Well, the churches are kind of under stress. I mean, the buildings are incredibly beautiful, especially the old traditional ones. And there was a huge construction of Victorian churches in the Victorian time. And they are really beautiful, but now they're crumbling at their, the stones are crumbling away. They're incredibly hard to heat. They're hard to work with. They cost a fortune to run and insure. And, it puts the congregation under a real stress. They're trying to worship the Lord. They're trying to give their money, but that money is not going very far. So we love to go in and renew the buildings so that the congregation can be renewed, so that the two can go hand in hand. We like to bring life back into them, bring warmth back into the cold, bring light into the darkness, and to just bring, make people feel welcome and feel this is a great place to be.
That sounds really, really interesting. How do you go about doing that from scratch though? Because you're right, these buildings, they are these wonderful places in the heart of a community that have stood there for the test of time, really. And then going in and trying to modernize it in such a way that makes it even more welcoming. Do you find that you get a little bit of a pushback or any kind of interference from people with the work that you're trying to do? Because there are people who believe that the buildings should remain as they are in these wonderful places that they do exist as. Do you find you get any backlash from trying to modernize buildings?
That's a really, really pertinent question. There is if you look at the organizations, there are a lot of organizations involved in, there's the Council of the Preservation of the Churches, so to speak. I mean, they are different kind of names. The whole of the Anglican structure has got the Council for the Care of Churches. But there's no council for the future of the church. There is no organization which is there for the future of the church. So there's no one to speak for you in these forums like the DAC. There's no one to speak for you for the future of the church. And they say, well, we all want the future of the church. And in fact, the legislation says in its first sentence, all persons shall have due regard to the worship mission of the church. And when I challenge people on it, they say, well, of course we do. Yes, but, you've got to do this, you've got to do this, you can't move this pew, you can't even make a hole in the wall for a toilet pipe because it's a listed building. And so we have all these challenges, but we know how to get through. We've eventually got through in every single case that we've dealt with by discussion, by compromise, by argument, sometimes by going to consistory court to, just to get something through. And I've got some high point stories of my career of winning the court cases.
Well, that sounds really interesting. And I'm glad you are standing up for the future of the church, because the church is the future, isn't it? It is that thing in the community that still stands the test of time. And that's what we want as Christians, for these places to be welcoming.
Absolutely. If you take an example of Greyfriars Reading, which was a church of about 300 people. It was a lively church at the time. It's a Victorian church, Victorianized medieval church, grade 1 listed. It had ordinary pine pews, and it was absolutely stuffed full because the Victorians made as many seats as they could. People paid to have a seat in the church. And the more seats you could get, the more the verger and the church wardens could get income. So it's just unsuited So in the year 2000, we reordered it, and that enabled them to run cafe, bring people off the streets, healing on the streets. The congregation, the congregation numbers grew to about 1,000. And now we've done phase 2, which is to turn the whole of their 1970s apse at the West End into a coffee shop. We broke through a big hole in this medieval wall. And it's a stunning coffee shop. It's so well appointed. People from all over coming there just to have a coffee. They don't come there because it's church coffee. They come there to have a lovely coffee. They sit there with there's a place for the kids to play. There's a bookshop that they can browse around. There's tables they can have meetings on. And meanwhile, there's all sorts of church activities going on at the same time. So the whole buzz of the church is growing enormously. So people have heard it, and we got a big award for it, and it was just a wonderful privilege to have been involved in that church. They spent $7 million on the building. And all that is money raised by the church.
Wow.
And that's a lot of money, and money granted in places and given in places. But, somebody worked on raising that money. It's fantastic to see the investment going back into the churches for the future. That's where it should be going. It's not really about just, paying for an air source heat pump because that gives you green brownie points. There needs to be a council for the future of the church, and it needs to get funds.
I totally agree with you. And I'm glad you brought up the green credentials. I don't think that's something we can get into today, but I know that's something that the Church of England and, of course, as Christians, we all work towards. You sound quite proud of all that you're achieving. Once a project is finished, do you get that opportunity to just step back? It sounds like you do, to just admire some of the things that you've achieved.
Well, that's a really interesting point, because I know God's given me a talent. He's given me the gift to know what to do and know it quickly. But I like to walk away and say, Lord, that you did that. I didn't do it. I don't want to take the glory. I don't want a big award. I just want to walk away and leave it that's the church. They get on with it. It belongs to them. And I can just walk in. I don't want to be a big hero. I just want to have been the person who's got to that point. But it is fantastic when you go in there and the last broom has swept up the last piece of builder's dust, and you look around and you think, wow, this is stunning.
I bet.
And because you've been holding on to that stunning look all the time, you've been thinking, how do we get it? And there's a lot of little details. How do the lights work? What do they shine on? You need to keep that picture of the stunning in your mind.
Even through all the chaos and the mess that's happening, you still have that vision right throughout the project.
You have to hold on to it, because there are lots of people who say, well, it's easier to do this way, or this would be cheaper, or why do we actually need this? And you think, you've got to have it, otherwise you'll lose that kind of sense of wonder. Some people might look at like this picture here. I don't know if you can see it from there. This is a picture of a very, very high tall building. Well, they wanted to put a floor in there, a separate floor. And I said, don't do it, because you'll lose that lovely height, And now the height is there, and it's in Chorley Wood, and it's used as a place where they can have lots of church things happening, children's work, adults' work, lunch clubs. It's attached to the church, but it's also next to a school. So the mums come in there after they've dropped their kids, or the mums and dads drop their kids off, have a coffee in the place, and there's this life. It's ordinary life going on in a church.
Just brings community back to the church, doesn't it, really?
Absolutely.
Now, you're here at CRE.
Yeah.
How important is CRE to you? Because you've been coming for quite a long time.
We have been coming. We've been going to CRE for many years when it was down in Esher, because we find that it does two things. First of all, as an architect, perhaps only architects know this, but you're a creative person. You're always sort of a bit worried that your work won't be good enough. It's just what happens to creative people. You aren't a big ego who thinks, well, I know best. You're kind of always just worried, So you have to put yourself on show. And that does wonders to your confidence when people say, oh, wow, look at what you've done. And you think, Well, I suppose so. I suppose it is good. It's you come from there, so it helps you, but it also helps us make contacts. So we write down the contacts, and we do get quite a lot of work. But I must tell you a lovely story about today. Today, somebody came up, and I was talking to him about the message that these buildings give, especially when they're closed. The doors are like fortified, and it looks like, well, if I ever got in there, would I ever get out? So this man said, he showed me a picture on his phone of his church. He said, this is what it looks like from the outside. I said, that's exactly the point I'm making. And he said, one of the parishioners was walking past with her granddaughter, and the grand said, Grandma, is this the place where all the ghosts live? So, it's this out of the mouth of babes, that little story just tells you what the impression that some of the fortified churches give. And it's not strange that the medieval churches were the fortifications. That's where the villagers really took shelter from all the people, marauding raiders who wanted to come and shoot arrows, and the slit windows are the places where you shot out of. But that architecture has come down and down and down through the ages. So now even Greyfriars Church with a 1970s extension had slit windows, and you walk up there, will I get shot if I walk up to this building? And it's the wrong message. No shops are like that. They've all got glass fronts, So now we use glass. We allow people to see in. We make it look lovely inside so that people can see from the outside.
Wow. It sounds just beautiful. And I love that story you've just told. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
Jeremy, if anybody wants to find out more about you or your company, tell us how we can find you online.
Well, it's easy. You just go JBKS Architects, or JBKS Church Architects. We come up number one on Google, I think, and we're easy to find. We have a stand at the CRE. We're really easy to find. In fact, we get a lot of work from our internet, from our website. I even got a call from India to say, we've got a Victorian church in India which is really in trouble. Can you come to India and help us?
Oh, wow.
That was really interesting.
That's an amazing story. Yeah. Well, Jeremy, thank you again for being here with us. And if, like Jeremy, you find CREs the place you want to come to talk about your business, or perhaps you want to exhibit next year, why don't you pop down onto the website today? It's creonline.co.uk.